Okay, so now Gandalf and Pippin arrive in Minas Tirith, and I've always in these reviews mentioned how the place they go or a place they go looks a certain way, and it kind of reflects the mood of the film. Luckily, this one isn't quite true, because Minas Tirith looks old and broken down and run down and worn out, and it's and luckily that's not the way the film series is going. And so they get up to the steward, Denethor, the steward of Gondor, and Gandalf says, he doesn't know a thing about Boromir. This is Boromir's father. We're going to, and later we're going to find out Faramir's father as well, of course. And so he doesn't know a thing about Boromir's death. It's better if you just shut up and let me do all the talking. And of course, Pippin goes in, and a few sentences into their conversations, he mentions Boromir's death or how Boromir died to save them, and then he offers his service to the city of Minas Tirith and to Gondor. And it's a great image to see kind of this sad steward, depressed kind of steward, holding up this broken horn. Of course, the horn that Boromir had in Fellowship of the Ring. We get a nice little flashback there. Nice to see. Okay, so then there's the scene in Minas Morgul where Frodo is tempted to go into the keep, and he, starts, the whole thing where the big beam goes up in the sky, and all the kids on acid are like, "What?" That great scene. But yeah, there's that scene, and then later on there's a battle of Osgiliath as well, because kind of Gandalf gives this little speech to Pippin that says, the pieces are set, or the board is set, the pieces are moving. You know what I mean? And it's kind of like a chess game, of course, except here the white guys are like half depleted when the game begins, and black's got everybody, and the pawns can move any which way they can. And they can take out anybody in more than one move. So it's pretty much an unfair chess game they've set up here. And Osgiliath, of course, falls. Faramir and his men can only hold it for maybe 3 minutes, and then it falls, and they retreat back to the city, and Gandalf saves them. And then, but at the same time, he tells Pippin, he says, light the beacons that will summon Rohan, that will summon everybody, because we're calling for aid. We need help. And it's a great little montage here where we see all the beacons being lit as they cross the mountains, and it's beautiful cinematography. I have to say again, Andrew Lesnie, the cinematographer here, yes, I got his name without having to write it down, fantastic work. I cannot believe it wasn't at least nominated for an Oscar. If it would have won, and it still would have been a clean sweep, it would have won 12. God, stupid Academy. Oh well. And then there's this fantastic little shot where Theoden, his worry kind of just ends a little bit, or it's at least weakened, because Aragorn comes running in and he says, Gondor's calling for aid, the beacons are lit, and there's silence. Dead silence for at least a solid 10 seconds. And everyone's looking at Theoden, okay, are we going to go, or are we going to avoid it? And then he finally says, and Rohan will answer, and it's a great little scene where then, it's like, okay, Theoden's on board. And he does bring up the point earlier on, I forgot to mention this with Gandalf, when he says, how come when we were under attack in Helm's Deep that Gondor didn't come to us? And of course, the answer was, oh my god, they're already fighting a war. Mordor's right next to them. What are they going to do? They can send maybe 3 people and that's it. And that would have slowed the orcs down by 2 orcs, and they all would have died. Let's see, what am I forgetting here? Oh yes, as we move on, we see that Frodo is kind of relying on Gollum now, and his possession, if you will, by the ring starts to become more and more and more evident in the way of his thinking, in the way of his actions. All of it is starting to come together to form him as almost a bad guy. And he uses him as a crutch, kind of, just to, to move on. And of course, as I said in Two Towers, there's kind of this connection where they both had this ring for, they both had or have this ring. and so that's a nice little motif there. And then there's probably one of my favorite scenes in the film that doesn't have anything to do with a battle, with action, or a triumphant moment. And that is, of course, when Denethor is sitting in his chair, saying, Osgiliath must be taken back. And he's kind of just ham-handedly just saying, we'll take it back, And he says, Faramir, lead the charge, and all that. And Faramir says it's way too dangerous, and all this. And he kind of brings up this point, which is, it's cruel to watch. And Denethor is a very cruel character, where Faramir says, you would have preferred if I had gone to Rivendell, joined the Fellowship, and died, and Boromir were here. And, of course, and Denethor answers, yes, I would have. And it's kind of like there's this scene in a film, another great film, called Stand By Me. I know a lot of you have heard it, probably, if you grew up in the 80s, or if you at least remember what the 80s were, or if you know anything about the 80s, aka before the Power Rangers. And that was, of course, the film Stand By Me, which was, there's this scene where the main character has this kind of flashback to his brother's funeral. Of course, you remember John Cusack, died in that movie, and he was a great baseball player. And not John Cusack, his character. And his father kind of turns to him and he says, "It should have been you." And it's that horrible moment, and it's actually one of the more sadder moments in the film, of course. But yeah, it's a movie. Stand By Me. It's a movie every 12-year-old kid should worship and adore. It should be on the top of their shrine. It's the perfect growing up movie. And I'm so glad I saw it close to that age. I think I was 13 when I saw that, but yeah, it's kind of almost a small motif to it. I don't know if Peter Jackson's seen that movie or if he knows that movie at all, but it's a really great scene. I love that scene. Even though it's kind of short, it's great to see both actors, John Noble and David Wenham, doing a great job.